Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. Got a couple of key, interesting statistics in today that we're going to talk to Ranting Andy Hoffman about. Number one is China just released their import stats for gold, and of course they're at record highs. And the U.S. just released their stats for gold exports, and they're near record highs. So Andy, welcome back, and how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
Doing okay. So these numbers are coming out, and normally you and I, we ignore propaganda stats because they don't mean anything and they're just put out by the government in hopes of making you believe something that isn't true. But these two numbers, in and of itself, the U.S. one wouldn't mean much. In and of itself, the Chinese stat wouldn't mean much. The two taken together, though, I think have some meaning.
Well, right. I mean, look, we know the Chinese are buying, so whether they say they're buying X or Y, it doesn't matter. You know they're buying. And based on what they did, was it 3 or 4 years ago, when they all of a sudden said we have 1,054 tons versus I think they had about 600 before, clearly they're buying a lot more than they say that they buy. So you can be sure that one day, the next time they decide it's politically a correct time to do it, they'll suddenly say, oh yeah, we have 2,000 tons or 3,000 tons. And they'll probably have 5,000 or 10,000 tons. We'll never know. And like you said, the import number is just tremendous. I think they have imported as much as the entire Eurozone holdings through August in just 8 months. As for the U.S. number, I hadn't really watched it until you told me about it because, frankly, I don't believe anything the government says. But, you know, they're exporting record amounts of gold, which shows you there's literally not a single soul in this country, except for maybe Miles Franklin customers, that are buying gold of any kind.
And don't forget me and FSN listeners. If you're listening to the show, you probably own gold or silver or both. And it's interesting that if by a classical measure, if you measured wealth by gold, China's getting richer, U.S., Western developed countries are getting poorer.
And more importantly, the Chinese are desperately, or any nation that has surplus currencies, trying to get rid of it as fast as possible. So if you are the Russians, the Chinese, the Arabs, anyone who is making money, so to speak, of any kind, they want to get rid of it as quickly as possible and put it into items of real value.
And you should be doing exactly the same.
Well, I certainly am.
and if you're within the sound of my voice, you should be doing exactly the same, because if China's doing it, if the Arabs are doing it, and Russia's doing it, and India as well, individual Indian civilians, if you will, then it probably is a good time to be buying.
And, you know, then just before you called me, we were talking about this big news which came out, which was that the German court made an official announcement that they have to audit their gold that's supposedly at the Fed. I'm not sure if it's also the gold that they hold at the Bank of England and the Bank of France, which they've also admitted to, but definitely the Fed. And the point is that anyone who has currency wants to either get their hands on gold or make sure that any gold they supposedly have actually exists.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal observation, their gold is probably in the basement of the Federal Reserve, unless those are tungsten-plated, gold-plated tungsten bars. The gold is there. It's just a question of claims upon that gold. How many times has it been leased, sold, and bought back? That's really the question.
Well, again, there's, I'm sure there is a big room of gold, like in the movie Die Hard or whatever that last Die Hard was. But how much is in there? And like you said, how much of it is actually owned by the Fed or Germany or whoever else is storing gold down there? And look, we're never going to see it. There hasn't been an audit of even Fort Knox in the last 60 years. And I don't care what kind of bills get put up, like Ron Paul's bill. We're never going to see what happens. And I mean, I'm not putting too much credence into this because I just can't imagine that the Fed would ever tell them outright exactly what's down there. Or let's say they did. Let's say they had a gun to their head and said, you better tell us. And they told them, what are they going to come out and put a press release? It turns out the Fed doesn't have our gold. There would be a civil war in Germany. The price of gold would go exponential and currencies would collapse. So, the point is this is more of a political statement, being that there's a lot of nervous people out there and a lot of nervous governments who know that fiat currency is falling and that they need to have as much gold as possible. And this is a nice first step, probably the tip of the iceberg from what we're going to see in the next few years.
I totally agree with you. I think that there's going to be the trend to bring your gold, to repatriate it, bring it home like Venezuela and like other countries. And this is going to lead to a real problem because this gold has been pledged far too many times for anyone to know who really owns it.
Yeah, I mean, and you'll see the piece that I have coming out this afternoon about the Perth Mint certificate program, and I'm not making any accusations of any kind, but when you lay out the facts, 81% of the certificates in that program are unallocated. So, who knows what's behind your certificate? And then we look back in 2008 when the industry ran out and even the Perth Mint suspended sales for some time. I mean, it's just like the German Bundesbank. You have to be sure that what you have or what piece of paper you have is backed by something behind it.
Yeah, and when you're talking about a piece of paper or a digital certificate, it's probably not worth the paper that it's written on. And the only way you know what gold you're really holding is the gold that you hold in your hand.
It's absolutely true. And, again, I get a lot of resistance for a lot of, I think a lot of the resistance to paper gold programs is from people who bought these products back, 5-10 years ago when it wasn't an issue. You didn't have systemic custodial fraud issues. You didn't have you
didn't have MF Global. You didn't have all them.
So people are like, well, we can buy these paper products. They're cheaper. It's a cheaper way to own gold. And, now that these are issues, people are like, well, I don't really want to sell this. I got to pay tax if I do that. And then there's a fabrication, all these kind of things. People are like, I'm just going to mentally fight it. I'm going to go into denial about the facts. And I really hope, and I'm not referring to this program specifically, I'm talking about any paper product that says that you own a real product, you better be skeptical of and do your homework.
Yeah, so contrast that with like Miles Franklin's program of Canadian gold ownership.
Yeah, I mean, look, Miles Franklin's program was created by Miles Franklin's officers. We started the program. We're the proprietors of the program. If it goes down, we go down personally, and that means Andy Sheckman and David Sheckman, okay? So they are auditing it personally because they want to make sure that their reputation and their wealth is safe because, as you know, Andy and David have been vocal. They put their PMs up there, as I did last week, and put a press release out on it. We go there every quarter personally, and Minneapolis to Montreal is not a long trip. And we go in the vault, which I did personally last year, and we see the pallets that have your name on it and your gold on it. And by the way, we charge cheaper than anyone in the industry for the service. Yeah,
well, you and I know each other pretty well. We've met. And if your gold is sitting there, not that I'm endorsing it, but, it sounds like it's a pretty safe bet. If you've seen your gold there, that's pretty good for me.
I mean, who's more paranoid than me? I didn't get my name and reputation and my career by being someone who trusts that someone else is holding my things for him. This was a very big decision for me, and it took a year of working with Andy and David and Joel Kravitz, who started the program, and spending time with the guys at the facility up in Montreal and knowing them very well, and seeing how our audit process works to feel comfortable doing this. And it was a big step for me.
Hey, you raise a great point. If Andy trusts it, then because, like you said, you're the most cynical about all of these schemes of protecting your wealth and certificates and allocated and unallocated, and there's a million schemes out there to make you believe that you're safe when you're not necessarily really going to be safe. So if the stuff is there with your name on it, I'd say that's a pretty good bet. And plus, let's not forget that Canada has a long history of protecting precious metals ownership. They've never confiscated or expropriated like the U.S. And it seems to me that the Canadian public as a whole are much more attuned to resource-based investing as a whole and precious metals in particular.
Yeah, and there's only 30 million of them compared to 350 million over here. I mean, look, when you talk about political risk, okay, look, there's political risk everywhere. But when you talk about storing gold, for instance, there's only about 6 or 7 countries in the world you really can do that. I mean, yeah, you can go to a bank in Norway or Liechtenstein or something. But the point is, there's only a bunch of first world countries that have these big programs that Americans, for instance, can send their gold to. You know, you got London, you got Australia, you got Canada, America, a couple others, Switzerland.
Switzerland,
yeah, Switzerland. There's not that many. And, you know, for me, certainly as an American, I think that the political risk there is better than any other one. People say, well, yeah, the Canadian government could do whatever they want. I go, I can't even comprehend how bad the world would have to be for the Canadian government to be looking into private vaults to get tiny amounts of gold. And if that's the case, if we get to that point, the world will be so bad already, it won't even matter whether you have gold or not.
Well, let's hope that it doesn't happen. But I do see that the trend is there. And even if they just say competing currency, that'll be the end of fiat currency anyway. And there's really no stopping it. So we've got a blog post that we definitely want to read today about Andy's analysis of the Perth Mint. I know the Perth Mint, they seem like good people, but I haven't dug into it, all the details like you have, Andy. And if they want to find out more about you, they go to milesfranklin.com and sign up for your blog or the other blogs out there. Bill Holter's writing for you guys now as well.
Yeah, Bill Holter's writing for us full time as of last week, and of course David's been writing for us for 20 years. And again, look, it's all about due diligence, not just about gold, but about being cynical about the things around you. Because I mean, forget talking about schemes for fake gold, but think of all the lies that have been perpetrated on Americans and other people of other countries over the last 10 years, and they're getting worse every day. You really have to do your due diligence and not trust anything you're told.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to relate a little anecdote to you because I thought of David. About 2 weeks ago, I moved to Florida, Palm Beach Gun Show, and that's like 40 or 50,000 foot building, square foot building in the Palm Beach fairgrounds. And it's packed with tables, every gun dealer and there's people that travel and all that. But there was a guy that had a Luger display. And I said, man, you're not supposed to take pictures there. I said, I'd love to take a picture and send this back to David because he was talking about Luger, appreciation of Luger pistols versus gold. And I just thought about him when I saw it.
Well, David, don't mess with him. He's a major gun connoisseur and aficionado, and I'll bet he knows how to shoot one.
Well, I could kind of point it in the right direction and squeeze the trigger, but when it gets down to precision shooting, I'll just have to use quantity over quality. All right, Ed. We'll talk to you next week, man. You be well, and I'll drop you a note from the Silver Summit after I see your friend Jeff Christian say his piece.
And on that note, make sure to give a plug here to Silver Circle movie. Which
is those are our friends. We love the Silver Circle. The movie's going to premiere in Spokane. We're definitely going to go see it. Chris Dwayne's also going to be speaking in Spokane, the Silver Shield, Silver Bullet guy. And it's going to be a lot of fun. If you're in the neighborhood, drop by and say hi. And Andy, we'll talk to you next week.
Great. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.